today with Giancarlo Andreoli from BLP out of San Jose, Costa Rica. And he's going to be speaking with us today a bit about the current state of the cannabis legalized regime in Costa Rica. And we're going to ask how it got there. And we're going to see what the future holds, at the very least, from somebody who knows what's going on the ground there. And so it's a pleasure to have you, Giancarlo. Thank you very much for joining me.
No, thanks for the invite, Mario. Very excited to be here.
Great. So I understand that Costa Rica is a bit slow out of the gate with regulating cannabis compared to, let's say, Colombia or the United States or obviously Canada. Can you tell me a little bit about the current state of legalization, or not, maybe in Costa Rica? What does it look like in Costa Rica?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so basically where we are at now is that it is not legalized 100%. What we have now is that you can have products with CBD, but 100% free of THC. The Ministry of Health here allows to sell products or import products or add the raw material of CBD to finalized products that are already registered in Costa Rica and to commercialize those products. But they have to be 100% free of THC. As I was telling you, there is currently law that is being reviewed and hopefully soon to be voted by the congressman in order to approve and regulate the cannabis for medicinal and therapeutical use, and the hemp for foods and industrial products. So that's basically where we stand. It is, I would say, pretty close to getting to be voted, but there still isn't a law approved.
So if you're a medical patient in Costa Rica with some of the conditions that cannabis is used to treat, you currently would only have access to CBD products?
That's correct. Yeah, you cannot use cannabis with THC. It is completely prohibited. Yeah, it has to be only CBD.
And are there many companies or many players in the CBD space currently, or what do you see going on as far as activity?
Well, actually, it's interesting because yes, there's a lot of companies, foreign companies that are interested, and what they are doing is they're getting to be involved in this CBD experience in order to understand the market and get to know a little bit of the Costa Rican market for them to be ready when this law is approved. So there's a lot of companies and individual persons that are starting to explore this new market with CBD.
So I'm curious, how did it get to be that CBD on its own was permitted or becomes allowed or to be used in these various different ways, and they just excluded THC? So for example, I know that in Colombia they allow a 0.3 THC and it's still CBD. In Costa Rica, how did we get to, and I guess just a side part, I was born in Costa Rica, but how did we get to the point where CBD was even allowed, I guess? And then maybe the sub question to that is, how was it allowed with THC fully excluded?
Yeah, actually, that's a funny question, because we had to do a lot with that here at BLP, because we had a client that wanted to get a product with CBD on the market. And well, at that moment, it was something that was completely forbidden. But we started to investigate, and the reason that the Ministry of Health was rejecting the permit was because they said that it was a drug. So we started to explain and go back and forth, and it took us about a year to get this permit. But we explained to them that CBD is actually not a drug and it doesn't have any psychoactive component. So it is not considered a drug, and therefore it cannot be treated as a drug. And once we got them to understand that it is not a drug, then they granted the permit. But they left out THC because THC has a component, or it's considered something that could have an adverse effect in the body. I mean, you and I both know that in very little percentages it doesn't affect, but that's not the way they see it here in the Ministry of Health.
And it is the Ministry of Health that regulates, I guess, all the psychoactive substances in that way, or narcotics, I guess. I'm not sure what they term them. Drugs, I guess, is the simple way.
Yeah, for the time being, it's the Ministry of Health that regulates the products with CBD. With this new law, they're including other institutions, public institutions, that will have to play an active role, like, for example, the institution that has to do with drugs, and other institutions that have to regulate, for example, the prices, as the government, for example, they have to set prices for the licenses and all those aspects. So yeah, for the time being, it's just the Ministry of Health for the CBD, but with the new law, there will be other key players in the game.
And are there many products available? Like, is it taking up shelf space in the supermarkets, or where is it being sold? Is this like an over-the-counter thing? Where would people encounter the products that are allowed?
Well, you're starting now to see them at the supermarkets. It's getting to be something that you see, for example, in beverages. I can tell you energetic beverages or kombucha as well. And there's also other products that have this component, like droplets and these sorts of things, that are also in other stores. And there's gummies and other products that you can find in the market. But yeah, they're starting to show up, and I think it's a big boom that is here in Costa Rica right now.
And so, are people cultivating there? Like, are they cultivate? Is there cultivation happening and then extraction, or what is the process?
No, that's forbidden as well. So as I was telling you, you can only import terminated products that are already finished and ready to be sold, or you can add the raw material to a finished product. So those are the only ways that you can sell CBD here. You cannot cultivate. That's prohibited as well.
Okay, so I guess the folks that are participating in the market are either importing a direct finished product for sale, or importing an isolate of some sort and then adding it to their already existing manufacturing capability.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, these companies that are outside Costa Rica, they already have products that are being sold in the US, Canada, and they're bringing them to sell them here. So that's basically what they're starting to do, explore the market with products that have been proven to be successful in other markets.
Interesting. And so then I guess my sort of final question is often, well, what are the next steps that need to occur to continue to support the growth of the industry? And you've already mentioned that there's a pending piece of legislation. What does that piece of legislation look like? I know you touched a bit about different regulators or different ministries being involved, but can you expand a bit on how far that legislation goes to support an industry?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so as I was telling you, you're correct. We're pending to have a final approval of this law that basically regulates the cannabis for medical use and therapies. and the hemp for foods and industrial use. So what this would do basically is allow the cultivation that you were talking about. This would be possible. For example, in the hemp, you could cultivate, you could produce, industrialize, commercialize, always within the regulation that is going to be established by law. And there are licenses that are going to be granted that will be regulated um, the by the government. Um, so they would have to comply with certain registrations and audits that will be necessary, as they would have to identify, for example, the farm or area that they would be cultivating it, the seeds, the providers, and they would have to comply with all the chain of where these seeds are coming from, and they have to be um, legal at the country that they are coming from, because this is part of the regulation that is established by these new laws. And those producers would be subject to audits periodically. So they would have to be ready to present and have all the documentation ready. You're going to ask something?
Yeah, how about the patients? How about is it a doctor prescribed? How would a patient, assuming that the legislation passes as is there a process for patients to access the medicine?
Yes, correct. Actually, it's also interesting because not only will they be allowed to sell, well, when it is regarding medical use, it has to be sold to an institution that's called, well, the Social Security of Costa Rica, that is in charge of controlling and distributing all the products of health here in Costa Rica. And patients will be allowed to access those medicines, but they could as well produce their own with a prescription of a doctor, but they would have to be completely regulated, and it would have to be like an exceptional case, and with a very small amount. It can be like you know, tons, but yeah. So patients will have access to cannabis as well with this new law.
And the import and export, well, I guess mainly import would continue, and do you know if there's going to be import and export allowed, or how does that look?
Yeah, it also regulates the imports and exports of cannabis here in Costa Rica. But yeah, we'll have to see, because the law is very general, so it doesn't have like the specifics. They say that once it gets approved, then there will be some regulations regarding the law that would be written by the government, and then we would get to know exactly the procedures to follow, the prices of the licenses, because they say that the price of the license, it would depend on the area that you will be cultivating, the use that you will be given, if it's for medical purposes, if it's for investigation purposes. So it will depend, but it's starting to build up. But I mean, it's still in this early stage.
So let me ask you then this: what is the chances of it being ratified through Costa Rica's Congress and legislative bodies?
Well, actually, there's a lot of support by the Congress right now, but we are in a period where the president is the one that presents the agenda to the Congress in order for it to be voted, and he has not shown that much of an interest for the project to be voted, which is contrary to what he has said at the beginning of the pandemic, since he said it was one of the major aspects that would bring some sort of economic relief, and that it would reactivate the economy. But now he has like taken a step back. So we'll have to wait for the Congress to resume their voting agenda, and we'll see what happens, which is in a couple of months.
Okay, so we'll certainly stay tuned and see see if it makes it on the agenda, and maybe you can join us again and give us an update.
For sure, I'll be delighted.
Thanks.